We've all seen the typical vampire movies.
Vampire.
Brooding immortals, gothic castles, the usual blood-sucking cliches.
Dracula.
Sinners 2025? This one hits different. Set in the deep south with blues, hoodoo, and a whole lot of heat, this film blends supernatural horror with raw, emotional storytelling, and people can't stop talking about it. At the movie's commencement, a young man named Sammy is observed approaching a church, his shirt stained with blood and a broken guitar in hand. Pastor Jedediah, upon seeing him, extends a welcome and attempts to offer a prayer for his son's transgressions, believing Sammy's present state stems from sinful actions. The narrative then shifts to the preceding day, revealing a cotton plantation where Sammy and his family earn their livelihood. Sammy gazes at the sunset and the cotton fields, harboring aspirations for a different future. Subsequently, two brothers, Smoke and Stack, are depicted returning to their hometown of Clarksdale, Mississippi, after a period in Chicago, Illinois. Having accumulated substantial wealth through their involvement with the mob, they negotiate with a local landowner, Hogwood, to acquire a disused sawmill and transform it into a juke joint. The brothers caution Hogwood about their readiness to protect their investment from any clan interference, but the elder man dismisses their concerns, intending to open the establishment that very evening. The twins then visit their uncle Jedediah, enlisting his son Sammy to perform his guitar music at the venue. Despite Jedediah's disapproval, Sammy agrees, promising to attend the following morning's Sunday service. During their travels, Sammy inquires about life in Chicago, to which the brothers respond that it mirrors Mississippi, save for its taller structures. This revelation disappoints Sammy, who had harbored grand expectations of the city and longed to visit. Upon concluding their journey, the trio retrieves a truck laden with stolen Irish beer and Italian wine, which they had concealed prior to their meeting with Sammy. This action highlights the brothers' prior commission of theft. Smoke expresses a desire to postpone the joint's opening until the following week, citing the extensive preparations required. However, Stack insists on an immediate opening, arguing that the favorable weather is ideal for a gathering. Smoke concurs, and to expedite matters, they separate. Smoke heads to the city for supplies, while Stack and Sammy are tasked with recruiting musicians and securing a doorman. Stack takes their vehicle, accompanied by Sammy. During the drive, Sammy plays a melody for his cousin, deeply impressing Stack with his skill. Sammy then inquires about Stack's childhood, but Stack recounts instances of brutal, unprovoked beatings from his father. He recalls one occasion where, after being knocked unconscious, he awoke to find Smoke burying their father's body. Their excursion leads them to the local train station, where they engage Delta Slim, a local musician. Concurrently, Sammy becomes infatuated with a married woman named Pearl, whom he invites to the joint. Stack finds himself in a difficult situation when confronted by Mary, a former lover. Despite being married, she admits to still harboring feelings for him and expresses her hurt at his abrupt departure without explanation. Stack displays no remorse, urging her to leave. However, upon learning of her mother's passing, he is visibly shaken. Following these events, the three men venture into the cotton fields to recruit Cornbread as their doorman for the evening. He initially declines, but his wife's encouragement persuades him to accept the role. Meanwhile, Smoke drives the truck into town, where he arranges with local Chinese grocers, Grace and Bach, to provide provisions and paint a sign for the juke joint. He then visits Annie, his betrothed. After paying respects to their deceased daughter, he returns a protective mojo bag Annie had given him years prior. After enhancing its protective properties through hoodoo, Smoke invites Annie to assist at the bar and fry catfish. She initially refuses, but eventually agrees after Smoke shares his feelings, and they share an intimate moment before departing. The scene shifts to Remick, whose skin appears to be burning. He rushes to the shade of a small shack and pounds on the door. A married couple, Bert and Joan, eventually open it, surprised by the man's claim of being pursued by Native Americans. The couple, armed and suspicious, agree to offer shelter when Remick presents them with gold. Revealing their avarice, the couple conceals him with Joan driving off a group of Indians at gunpoint. After their departure, she goes upstairs, only to discover her husband motionless on the floor. With Remick smirking menacingly, his eyes glow red, and he possesses terrifying fangs. Joan realizes Remick has transformed her husband into a vampire, and he soon revives, sharing Remick's sinister smile. Joan shrieks, and shortly thereafter, shares his fate. It becomes apparent that as the sun has set, the trio, now vampires, will gain increased power. Eventually, the juke joint officially opens for business. However, tensions quickly arise as the brothers argue over customers paying with plantation tokens, usable only at local stores, which Smoke estimates will significantly impact their projected profits. Patrons begin arriving at the joint, and Pearl also makes her appearance. A grin spreads across Sam's face as the two begin conversing. The establishment starts to buzz with patrons enjoying their beverages. Matters escalate when Mary arrives on the scene. Stack commands her departure, but she refuses, asserting her desire to remain with her loved ones. Sammy, aiming to impress Pearline, soon gets the opportunity to perform for her, accompanied by Slim on a musical piece. Their melody is so vibrant, it seems to transcend temporal boundaries, its essence permeating every individual within the juke joint. Following this musical interlude, Remick, Bird, and Joan appear at the entrance, requesting admission to the gathering. They profess a desire to entertain the crowd and offer payment, but Smoke harbors suspicions of their malicious intent and denies them entry. This moment clarifies that uninvited vampires cannot trespass onto private property. After concluding their performance, Sammy and Pearl retreat to a private room, where they engage in passionate intimacy. Stack calls out for Sammy, but the sounds of their lovemaking from within the room lead him to understand the situation, and he refrains from disturbing them. The narrative shifts to Smoke confiding in Stack about their financial predicaments. He reveals that the acquisition of the sawmill has plunged them into a precarious financial state, with their available funds projected to deplete within 2 months unless the establishment thrives. Stack shares their mutual financial concerns with Mary, eager to assist. Mary expresses her intent to seek out the trio who were just expelled. Remick, Bird, and Joan Stack voices his objection, but Mary remains resolute in her plan to obtain funds from them to aid Stack and Smoke. Recognizing her unwavering determination, he entrusts her with a firearm. Mary approaches the trio, who have not strayed far. They present her with peculiar gold coins, but when Remick discloses his true nature, she becomes alarmed and draws her weapon. She instructs them to vacate the premises and turns to head back to the establishment, only to be transformed into a vampire herself by Remick. Mary then returns to the juke joint and requests entry from Cornbread, who, unsuspecting, grants her passage. She proceeds to seduce Stack with a dance, drawing him into an adjacent room. Their embrace deepens into intimacy, and despite noticing her excessive salivation, Stack does not resist. At this juncture, she promptly sinks her teeth into his neck, causing him to bleed profusely. Smoke calls for Stack regarding business matters, but receives no response. He ventures to the room and opens the door, recoiling at the sight of Stack lying in a pool of blood, with Mary feeding on his neck. Reacting swiftly, Smoke draws his weapons and fires at her. She collapses to the ground, but after a brief interval, regains her footing. A smile plays on her lips, and with luminous eyes fixed on Smoke, she menacingly declares that she and her newly converted companions intend to eliminate everyone present, then exits the building with a laugh. Smoke attempts to rescue his brother, but Stack's injuries are too grave, and he succumbs shortly thereafter. Following these tragic events, Stack's body is secured in the storage area, and the festivities are halted, with guests instructed to depart. The patrons disperse, oblivious to the looming peril. Grace insists on returning home, and Beauchau also departs to start his family's vehicle. Meanwhile, Slim has assumed the door duties from Cornbread, who stepped out for a restroom break. While relieving himself, he perceives faint, distant murmurs which instill fear in him. It becomes apparent that he has fallen prey to the vampire's machinations, and they have successfully hunted him down. Cornbread reappears shortly, requesting admission. The others find this behavior peculiar and deny his request. When Cornbread demands his payment, Smoke extends the money through the partially open doorway, but Cornbread seizes his hand and attempts to bite. Before Cornbread can succeed, Smoke shoots him. Witnessing him still exhibiting movement, those inside the establishment secure the main entrance. Abruptly, Stack's voice emanates from the storage room, demanding release. Annie advises Smoke against it, but Stack forcefully breaks through the door. She then splashes water mixed with garlic onto him, causing him to recoil in pain and flee through the front exit. Recognizing the gravity of the threat, they seek Annie's guidance, and she instructs them to collect garlic, wood, and silver. She admits to never having encountered such creatures firsthand, but has heard accounts of them. Annie informs the group that they must await the dawn. As vampires are vulnerable to daylight, which causes them to perish. It is subsequently revealed that Remick has transformed all those who previously departed the establishment into vampires. Along with B. Remick asserts his primary objective is to claim Sammy, believing his musical talent could facilitate a connection to something he seeks. He also attempts to persuade the others, suggesting that embracing vampirism will grant them a sense of belonging and connection absent in the mortal realm. Smoke remains firm that the individuals inside will not surrender Sammy, and Grace becomes increasingly fearful as her transformed husband declares his willingness to turn their daughter, Lisa. Following their conversation, Smoke concludes that eliminating Remick will ensure the safety of everyone else, including Stack. However, Annie clarifies that the situation is not that simple. Any individual who has been turned must be dispatched by either sunlight or a stake through the heart. The primary objective shifts to surviving until dawn, but Remick and his associates begin emitting terrifying sounds, ultimately causing Grace to break and demand that they enter and confront them. Those within do their utmost to repel the vampires, but Grace, Pearl, and Annie soon succumb. Before Annie can be converted, an anguished Smoke impales her with a stake. Fulfilling her desperate plea, in a courageous act, Slim sacrifices himself to allow Smoke to escape with Sammy, only for them to encounter Remick and Stack. Smoke engages his brother, while Remick pursues Sammy outside, attempting to turn him. Sammy fights back against the monstrous creature, eventually shattering his guitar over Remick's head with a silver fragment piercing his skull. This action causes all the other vampires to cry out in agony, revealing their shared physical connection. Meanwhile, the conflict between Smoke and Stack intensifies. Despite Stack being a vampire, Smoke, a veteran soldier, employs his expertise to outmaneuver his sibling and holds a wooden stake near his heart. Just as Remick is about to kill Sammy, Smoke intervenes and stakes Remick, causing him to disintegrate in a burst of flames. Sammy and Smoke successfully endure until morning, witnessing the remaining vampires combust around them. Smoke bestows his brother's vehicle upon Sammy, instructing him to depart the town before retrieving equipment from his truck. Remick had previously divulged that Brett was the offspring of the local clan leader, who is in fact Hogwood, and Smoke is quite certain that Hogwood and his group will arrive. Smoke readies himself, retrieving his concealed machine gun, and anticipates the impending confrontation. His suspicion proves accurate, as Hogwood soon appears with several men, intent on causing trouble. Removing Annie's protective mojo bag, Smoke ambushes them, eliminating his adversaries, but sustaining a fatal gunshot wound during the exchange. Moments before his death, Smoke glimpses Annie and their infant. Concurrently, Sammy returns to his family's church, where his father, upon observing his bloodied and battered condition, implores him to abandon his passion for the blues. Instead, Sammy departs in his brother's car, clutching the remnants of his guitar. Time progresses, and it is revealed that Sammy achieved renown as a blues musician after a performance in Chicago in 1992. Stack and Mary visit Sammy. Stack discloses that Smoke spared his life after Stack pledged not to harm Sammy, and that he and Mary escaped the juke joint before sunrise years ago. Stack also senses Sammy's impending demise from old age and offers to transform him into a vampire. An offer the elderly man declines. Stack further admits they have been following his career and wish to hear a tune from their past. Sammy acquiesces, retrieves his repaired guitar, and performs for them. In a final farewell, Sammy confesses that despite still experiencing nightmares about that fateful evening until dawn, it was the most significant day of his life. Stack concurs, stating it was the last time he saw his brother and son, and admits it was the sole occasion he felt truly liberated. Hey, don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep dives like this. Until next time, stay safe and keep your garlic close.
Garlic!